Kim.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, can you record?
Yes, I just started it. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for your reminders. I think I've said my Achilles heel is getting excited and getting going and then forgetting to set the recording. So I appreciate everybody. So far, we've made it through all the sessions. That's great. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, with the responses that I saw, I'm going to just back up a little bit, and I'm going to give a little bit of information about XD, because we had several people say that they are either beginning or not familiar. And for those of you who are familiar, hopefully you'll get something from this background as well. XD, which really refers to the category of experience design, was developed because we are seeing more and more across industries. It really doesn't matter what vertical it is, whether it's education, commercial, pharmaceutical, government. Experiences matter really more than ever. Consumers are becoming very picky about what they choose for an experience, and many of them are becoming more and more digitally savvy, and they decide this is not something I want to do. I'm going to switch over to something that is there. So trying to create experiences that happen mostly on a screen has been a challenge for people who are thinking about what it is that they are trying to help people either navigate or they're trying to advertise. When you think about it, the meals we order, the products we buy, the bills we pay, the accounts we open is done through a screen interface. And more people, as I said, have that expectation that experience is going to be simple, it's going to be efficient, or they're going to go somewhere else. So the disconnect that we have had in the past is that somebody would who really knows either the product or the service that they are trying to offer is not necessarily a person who's a coder, someone who's going to be able to program a mobile app or a website. And so what ended up happening is you'd have a group of people with ideas. They would try to either whiteboard or put together some sort of visual representation of what they want. That would go to the programmer. The programmer would come back. They'd say, well, that's not really what I had in mind. I really would like to tweak it this way. And there was this constant back and forth, slowing down the development and really providing a lot of unnecessary steps that were inefficient and also made it more difficult to get to that end result faster. So Adobe thought about, what if we could have a product that didn't necessarily build the website, didn't necessarily build the mobile app, but what it did was it created a prototype so close to what the idea folks had in mind that when it was handed off to a developer, they had everything they needed to move forward quickly and more efficiently without a lot of that back and forth. Not that some of that still isn't going to happen, but it just removed so many steps. And there was the inception for XD. So XD started as a mobile and website prototype app. But what we have found is that more and more people are using XD as a presentation tool. And why is that? Think of what happens in a mobile app. Everyone here, I am sure, has a mobile app that they like to use, especially after the last year and a half. I think a lot of us have more mobile apps than we used to have for ordering food and paying bills and getting things done. Every app has a non-linear interface, right? You want to do something in that app that is, I don't know, just one of the many parts of what that mobile app can do. I can move around in that app in a different direction than someone who comes in and wants to do, let's say, instead of ordering food, they really want to check out menus, or instead of paying their bills, they want to look at their statements, whatever that may be. So for presentations, where this has become very valuable is that we have the ability to create a non-linear presentation. So think about PowerPoint, which is a wonderful presentation tool and has come a long way over the years. You start from one screen and you move linearly down through that presentation. Now, there are ways to get back to different screens, but it's just not quite as efficient. And I have a template here. This is actually an internal template that I use when I am working with my customers to help them better understand a particular piece of software, where it aligns to their goals and initiatives. And I'm just going to use this as an example. So here are the basic template slides, those points that I want to make sure that I am covering to make sure that my customer has the information they need, whether it's their business objectives, what are the pain points that they are experiencing for in their institution. When you look at XD, it has a very simplified user interface. And the reason for that is Adobe did not want to clutter the screen with a lot of menus and panels that when someone opens it up, they look at all of that and say, wait a minute, this is way too complicated. So if I look here up at the left-hand side, I can see I have a very simplified toolbar. Some of these icons are going to be familiar to anybody who works in software. We have a type tool, we have basic shape tools, a pointer that allows me to select and move items around. And there's a couple more. Here's a zoom tool. In addition to that, if I flip back over here to the right-hand side, I see what we call a properties inspector. It's basically a set of attributes that align with the object that I select. And let me show you the difference, what I'm talking about. If I'm in a type tool and I click on this, notice that all of a sudden I get a text panel that pops up, giving me options for size, font, line spacing, leading, whatever it may be. But if I click now back on this arrow key and I click on a image, that goes away. And now I have attributes that would be applicable to what I selected. So it's context sensitive, and it provides me with just those attributes that I need to manipulate whatever I have selected. I think most of the Creative Cloud tools are actually moving in that direction. There have been remakes of pretty much most of our major applications where a user can choose to have the old interface if they want, but they can also move forward to have a much more condensed and simplified user interface. What we want people to be able to do is focus on what they are trying to do. What is the problem they are trying to solve? What is the project they are trying to create? I'm going to flip back over to the left-hand side again, and we have three other icons here. One of them has to do with the document assets and how this interfaces with what we call Creative Cloud libraries. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Creative Cloud libraries, libraries are a cloud repository that I can link to, or actually they're automatically linked to my Creative Cloud applications. So for example, let's say I'm collaborating on this project with someone and we decide that this image is the one that I'm proposing to go next to a quote that I would like to have from the customer, all right? I can put this in a library, and now anyone who is collaborating with me in that library can go into InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, and they can work on those individual pieces without ever having to download this item, without having to go to another location or another cloud space. These are collaborative places so that everybody knows what it is that they're working with, what everyone has agreed on throughout that project, which is really exciting. In addition to that, we do have layers. Each one of these artboards, that's what we refer to each one of these individual elements, has a lot of information on it. I have text, I have images. It gets even more complex maybe with header information, footer information. We're going to see even more of that in some of the other examples that I'm going to show you. So sometimes I want to drill down into what's there. So I double click on it. I can see that here are some items. There's a repeat grid, there's a presentation title, an aerial view of a freight train. All of these items, it ends up then surfacing that information. When I click the chevron to go back, now I get a view of all of my artboards. And one of the most exciting pieces I love about XD, right now I'm in the brand new presentation add-on or plugin. I'm going to go back here. We have opened up, or Adobe has opened up XD to developers all over the world who are creating plugins for this application with specific needs. So for example, let me just talk about a couple of my favorites. When I'm working with a mobile app prototype, and I work with students from all over the world in something that we call creative jams. And this is where students can come in on their own and they can compete in an education competition. Let's just call it a competition. We always have some sort of a theme that they are going to follow, and many of them have never used the program ever. And they jump in, they get a 50-minute boot camp, and then they design their mobile app. And it's really fun. We have prizes, we have judges who are experienced in the field, and they give feedback. It's really, really exciting. And so many of these students are not design students. They're history majors, engineering majors, and what these plugins allow them to do is leverage assets that have been developed by these companies and include them or help them fill in the assets they need without starting from scratch. So one of my favorites here is called, where is my UI faces here? Oh, here it is right here. So for instance, UI Faces provides me with the ability that if I put several circles, let's say, I can choose to have this plugin fill those in with profile pictures, and I can choose the diversity. I can, depending on what my audience is, whether I am speaking to, maybe I'm speaking to a women's group on some certain thing. I may want to have women's profile pictures. Often I just choose diverse pictures and it brings those in. I don't have to worry about royalties, copyrights, or anything like that. Another one that is really exciting is I really like Undraw, which provides me with vector art that I can plug in and customize. So because these are fully vector, XD lets me drill down and go into an SVG format to format these. So this gets me to my point about this one called presentation. This is brand new, and what it is providing is a group of slides and themes that give you a starting point, so we don't have to start with a blank screen. But before I do that, I want to go back really quickly to this one here. Oop, that's not the one. Oh, it ended up going back. Hang on, let me grab that one really quickly. All right, let me just show you that nonlinear workflow. I meant to do that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this panel. In XD, you are working in one of three modes, that's all. Most of your time is going to be spent in what's called the design mode. This is where I'm putting together all the assets that go into that presentation artboard. Think about PowerPoint and how you place text, images, icons. This is what happens in the design mode. Prototype mode is where I'm going to link these boards together to determine how I can navigate amongst them. And the third is, how do I share this with the rest of the population that are interested in seeing this particular presentation? So while I'm in design mode, at any point I can click on this icon over on the right, which is my preview, to see how this is going to function in real life. So this is my title slide. I'm going to go ahead and click. Here's, let's say, maybe a quote I want to do. Here's an agenda of what we want to do. And as I move through, at any point, if my conversation with my audience changes, I can immediately go back and change direction. They've decided this is something that they would rather postpone for another meeting. What they'd really like to talk about is, do I understand their current pain points? Or do I want to, they want to talk about next steps that we want to review, or even an appendix that gives them those resources. I may want to jump to that because someone brought up that information, which I usually keep at the end of this. So it just gives me that flexibility of moving around depending on the conversation. And we want this to be a conversation. So with that being said, I'm going to go back up to, let's say, my business objectives. If I take a look at this in prototype mode, I'm going to see these lines connecting these different slide experiences. And so if I move over here, I can see all of the different links that are helping me navigate through this that I can set up manually. What's really exciting about this new plugin is that it is, because it's focused on presentation, you can override anything you want, but it will kind of link things up for you automatically. So let's just look at how this thing works. I think I had that was untitled. Here we go. So I look through these, and let me just bring this up. I can see that I have different themes, and I'm sure anybody here who works with Spark, who works with some of our other products, we really try to focus on a theme that matches the emotional connection you want with the subject matter. And some of these in this particular template are minimalistic, some are bold, some are geometric, and I can click on one and see some examples of what the slides look like. Not all of them, but I can get a pretty good idea of what that might look like. And at that point, I can say, well, I'd like to select this theme. Or I can say, well, I want to take a look at some others. This is a much more minimalist with a very light background. Again, to me, this is much more modern looking with very sharp angles. Here's another one that, again, is very minimalist, very basic. Here's a lot of color. And I see, in addition to the slides, this plugin has already given me a color palette. It's going to give me a set of images that go with that theme if I choose to use them. And it's even going to associate icons that have been aligned with this particular image. I'm sorry, with this particular theme. And what's exciting about that is that it's all included in XD and the plugin, which is free. Most of our plugins are free. Some of them, if they have very specific uses, let's say for a online printer, a magazine printer, something like that, there may be some functionality that they want to purchase in it. But for the most part, all of the plugins that I use are free. Now let's just click through a couple more. This is one I really like. And I was playing around with this one, and I have an example of this that I substituted some information. So let's just go ahead and say I want to select this theme. Once I select the theme, I can now choose to either navigate within those slides that have already been placed, so I get a title slide. I also can take a look at all of the pre-formatted slides that are part of this theme. There are 29 of these different slides. And so I can go through and say, well, I definitely want the title slide. I might want some sort of an agenda slide. So I click on that. It adds it to my presentation. I'm going to choose this one. Let's say I want an image that's going to start off my presentation. I might need some bulleted elements. And I really liked this part. I noticed that I have the ability to choose some pre-made grids. So I've got 2 photos, 3 photos, 4 photos, 5 and 6, going all the way up to 8 photos. I'm not sure if I need that many, but I like the 3 photo one, might be interesting. As I'm trying to think through my presentation, and let's, just for time's sake, let's make that. Notice you also have a couple for any type of charts or data representation, visual representation, and then I'm going to put a closer in here, just thank you. All right. I can also go to my elements that are associated with this. So already there's been a paragraph style that's been defined, a header, and header XL. I have icons that have been aligned with this that I can substitute out at any point. You can see there's quite a few of these. Going to go back to elements. I have basic shapes, charts, illustrations, and then again, I have these curated pictures. Now, in many cases, though, a lot of these pictures and images are beautiful and they may work well with this theme, I might have my own images that I want to make sure are included in this, like any of us who are creating presentations. But before we jump to that, let me just go back through here really quickly. And I want to show you what happens from a presentation standpoint. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. I have not linked these together. So if I go to prototype, I can see that none of this has actually been linked. I can see that I have the opportunity to link. And by the way, any functionality that, for those of you who do know XD, anything you want to include, such as animations, you want to create a repeat grid on top of one of these slides, you are more than welcome to do it, and all that functionality is going to work. But from a very beginning level, I can now just go to my preview button, which we looked at earlier, and I see that presentation. This has also provided functionality without my having to build it in, that I can use my arrow keys to go through these different slides. Typically, that is a function in XD that I add in my prototype mode. Now, I ended up playing with this a little bit. Let's see. Let me just see which one it was. I have so many here. No, I think that's this one. We're going to close that. Nope. By the way, since I'm sitting here navigating for one of these, I wanted to also bring up the point that in XD, you can have cloud documents and you can have local documents. You can have both, actually. That the importance of the cloud document is that XD provides the ability for you to collaborate with people on the same file. But the file needs to be a cloud document so that no matter where someone is, they can collaborate on that project. I was just reading, my sister just sent me a part. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the new Disney animated movie Raya the Dragon, and she was watching it and she noticed, she's also in publishing, so she noticed this one quote at the end, and it had to do with one of the people saying, "This is the first time we have ever tried something like this. This film was completely done in 400 separate homes using online technology that has never been implemented before." And I think though all of us are not animators doing feature films, I think all of us can relate to that a little bit, how we have had to change our workflow in order to get those collaboration steps we need through a cloud structure, rather than being able to get together face to face in a room. And that's what this collaboration feature does. And I may not, let's see if I have this one fixed. Sorry about that. I thought I had that one already open. Oh, here we go. Actually, I think this is it. Yeah. So I went in and I just changed some things. You know, maybe I did that on the animated one. Anyway, I changed some of the pictures that I took on this extended vacation. I added some Illustrator or vector art to that. I'll talk a little bit if anybody's interested in how you change that. Added some additional photos in here to customize it to what I was trying to do a presentation on. And I ended up changing out that back photo as well. Now, text is obviously very easy to change. I can just go in and double click it just like I would any other application that deals with text. So this is my title slide, and so on and so forth. I don't think I need to go into that with you guys. Now let's go back and say, all right, I want to visit that project again. Each time I brought in an additional slide, you'll see that my available styles expanded. And if I want to change the text, I can just go ahead and click on it and click on those styles because they've already been made available. I can use the color palette, which has been, as I said, created for me so that I'm staying within something that makes more sense for that, though I can override that also at any point. And it just so happens at the same time, I noticed when I got back from my vacation that we had a new submitted animation template. One of the things people love about XD is this auto animation feature. And I'm going to go back to this one to just give you a little preview of how that works. Animation in XD takes two artboards, and let me just go into this real quickly. So let's say that I preview this. That's interesting. Oh, here you are. You're right over here. All right. And I click on something that I want to go with. This one does not. I may not have set this one up. Hang on. Sorry about that. Let me use a different file for this. It's actually a little bit easier to visualize animations. This is a free resource, by the way, that you can get off the website. And I just want to show you, this is a list of all of these predefined animations just to help you wrap your head around how this ends up working. One of my favorites is this one called Night Switch. When you create an animation, basically all I'm doing is including everything that's going to be a part of both of the slides, the beginning and the ending. But I'm either hiding some of the information, I am reducing it, maybe I'm bringing its visibility down to 0. So even though I see two separate switches here, okay, actually all of this, the color, the sun, is already here. It's just being hidden. Then I typically duplicate that slide. I uncover all the pieces that I want. They just have to have the same layer structure. And when I connect the two using the prototype tool, and let's just take a look at this one here. I'm going to get a look at this. I can see that in prototype mode, all of those design attributes have gone away. And instead, what I see is an interaction definition. What's going to trigger that? So if I'm doing a presentation, I might want to use my cursor keys. So I would end up going to keys and gamepad, putting in the key that I want to use to navigate. I can also use tap, which is very common, right? In a mobile app, that's something you would expect to be able to do, to either drag or tap. So let's just say that I click on tap. I can choose what type of interface or action is going to take place when I hit that trigger. I'm going to use auto animate. And I'm going to go from night switch to day switch. Decide how I want that to look. Do I want it to snap fast? Do I want it to spin around, bounce, ease in, ease out? And these are things that you can just experiment to find exactly what you want. And then the duration. I'm just going to leave these right now at the default. Let's go ahead and preview this so you can get an idea of how this works. So here's my switch. And when I click, remember it said snap, you kind of feel that weighted snap going on, and I can just do this back and forth. No coding, no knowledge needed for how animation actually works. What's really happening in the background is XD's creating a bit of it. It's people refer to it as a tween, and it's just comparing the artboards and then animating the differences between them. Let's just try another one. These are 4 different dashboards that maybe I want to include in a presentation. Each one has a different chart. And this, what's hard to see here is these little day, week, month, and all time. And that's what's associating each of the different charts. Again, let's just go ahead and preview. When I click on week, the chart just animates to that next. And also notice I have numbers, dollar numbers going on up here that are changing because they're associated with that particular graph. These can be incredibly simple, very engaging, to something that is actually a little more complex. And every time I see this example, I'm just blown away that this was done with just 6 different modes of this front-loading washer machine. That's the closest thing I can find to how I describe this. And check this out. This is just amazing to me. A couple things I want to say ahead of time on this. This was done instead of a tap. It is a time action, which means that, or a time trigger. I could say when this becomes visible, in 0 seconds, I want you to move to this next one, in 0 seconds to this one, or I could give a time delay. And that's why I'm not even going to have to tap this to make this take off. I'm blown away by how smooth this animation is. Again, I am not an animator, though I dabble in a little bit for my job. I am not an expert in this, and you can see that there's absolutely no coding involved. It's just really doing your before and your afters. So with that, I noticed that a designer provided for Adobe an animated presentation deck. So let's just take a quick look at this. This again is a presentation. It provides, what is this, 12 different slides, and you can choose to have either the animated version or the static version. So let's just check out this animated version and move through this. We'll come back out and look at some of these other pieces if anybody's interested in an animated deck template without having to put those animations in themselves. All right. So that's the opening, that really beautiful growth circle. I'm going to move to the next slide. My images are popping in. This is very smooth. She really thought this through. Anyway, I really love this deck. So let's go back and take a look a little bit more at how you can edit this. I can edit anything, obviously any text or elements that I want. But what the designer did is if you want to change out any of these image placeholders, she has placed a artboard here where this is where you update the images, which is really easy to do. One of the things I love about XD is that if there is a shape and I want to insert an image, most of us don't have images that are circles or that are half circles, but what we do have are rectangle images. And when you drag an image into a shape, that shape automatically crops out or masks, for those of you who are familiar with that term. And I can, let's say, I'm just going to go in here with some images. Oop, no. We're going to, if we do a repeat grid, we're going to use this one. But let's see here. Go to my desktop. All right. And again, I've got so many images from this last trip I was on. Let's do this one. I'm just taking the image. This is just a JPEG. Going to drag it right over. Now, when I drag an image over a shape, do you notice that the shape darkens? Right? That means that XD has acknowledged that you are trying to place an image to replace the one that's already in that shape. When I let go, I have this picture of Bryce. And if I double click, I see the full image. So maybe I want to shift that a little bit to the left or to the right. Maybe I want more of the sky, more of those trees. When I click off of that element, right, the masking re-implements itself and I have this. So I went through and I changed up just really quickly, only took me about 10 or 15 minutes, images from different national parks that I visited over the last month. And I didn't even touch the deck yet, right? All I did was substitute out these images. And when I look now at the deck, and of course we would definitely have to, change the text and a lot of the elements, but I was really excited to see how seamlessly it ended up placing my images. Let me get past the charts because I didn't work with them. All right, I think you guys get the idea. So the plugin, how do you get a plugin implemented with XD? Let's just go back and review that really quickly. In the plugins panel, which is the bottom, looks like a pair of binoculars, right? With that exposed, when you open yours up, it may be completely blank because over time I have added multiple plugins. But what you will see is this area here at the top, plugins and a plus sign. When I click on the plus sign, I go through and I can look at featured plugins, all plugins, and then I can manage my plugins. So I'm going to look at all plugins. And it's pretty amazing how many plugins there are now. Remember, most of these are not Adobe plugins. These are third party that are trying to help their customers solve some challenges that they may have when they are designing, because you can imagine all of the different verticals that are trying to communicate with these digital screens, in addition to presentations. And if I click on Manage Plugins, these are the plugins that I have, and it lets me know if I have an update that's ready. It lets me remove them, or maybe something is no longer compatible because I haven't updated, something to that effect. But this is how I get that. So I can go in, let's say all plugins. I can find one that maybe I don't have. I don't have Wireframer. I can just go ahead and click Get, and it will go ahead and load that plugin. Notice too that it's always going to tell me if that plugin is free so that I know upfront. Not that it can charge me for anything. And if I want, I would have to go through a process if I wanted to purchase a service within that plugin. But it's really nice to have that information. Okay. I'm going to go out of this and back in. Once you have placed that plugin, you're going to see it in the list. And when you click on it, you're going to have access again to that particular plugin and all of the features that it has to offer. Okay, let's see here. We have about 15 more minutes. I was wondering if anybody would like to see some of the common functionality features that people really like to use. So for example, we have something called a repeat grid. We have different things. I don't know, Jason, are there any questions about people asking about for just some of those common functions that people really like to use within XD, or is there any questions that we want to go a different direction?
Yeah, there hasn't been any questions. Maybe, Donna, how about we start from just a brand new XD document and just show people how to do a title slide into a table agenda slide?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Let's just do something. Yeah, let's do something from scratch. And then what I'll do is take a few minutes to talk about another feature, which I think really applies. We have this feature called Repeat Grid that I think applies to not only a mobile app, a website, but I have found that it's really helped me with my presentations as well, because often we have repeated elements. For instance, I had these circles with images. Instead of creating a circle, copying and pasting it, aligning it, duplicating this thing, I can use Repeat Grid to come up with these elements that we all are familiar with. We make choices because we know they're at the same level, but we also know that each one has to be customized so that the person watching knows that there's a difference between them. And that probably didn't make a lot of sense, but let me just create a new one to go through that. When you create a brand new document or project, you can always start from scratch if you want. I like starting from a template because, or something that I've done because I'm just going to save me time. But many of us are the person who's maybe going to build the template for ourselves moving forward or not. We have all different sizes. Every mobile device you can think of, size, if you're doing something that's going to be delivered on a mobile app. We have web, which I'm going to use that right now just because for a presentation that actually makes a lot of sense. When I navigate around here, obviously I have a zoom tool, but there's a couple little things that you can do when you are just navigating on your keyboard if anyone is interested. When I select an artboard, right? I want to make sure I'm grabbing it by its title. These can hold all kinds of information, as we already saw, but let's just put a few things down on here. One, let's take a look at the background. The background by default is white, but I can change that. I could make it a solid color. I could make it a linear or a radial gradient or an angular, and I'm just going to use a linear. For my top color, I'm going to use, let's see, this blue. And for the bottom layer, I'm going to, or not the bottom layer, but for the other part of the gradient, let's just use that. So I have something that goes a little bit darker to something a little bit lighter. Think about too that any presentation or project you create may have to be in line with a brand, your school colors or logos. So if you have a library that you set up that contains those elements, anybody who collaborates with you is going to be able to access those same ones so that we're all on the same page. I'm going to just zoom out by pressing Command minus, which is a very common zoom in, zoom out. If I want to make a duplicate of this, or I want to add another artboard, there are different ways I can do it. I can click on the artboard tool. But for right now, I'm just going to duplicate this. And let's talk about how would I get a title on here. So I'm going to go to my type tool. I need to get out of my plugins. I can just type title slide. And again, if I had those branded elements, if I had size, a font, anything that I felt was really important to use, let's just see if this is too big. There we go. Notice we have a lot of text modification tools over here on the right. I can, again, change its color. And let's put, I'm going to put an image on here. I could use that as a background image, but I want an excuse to do this rectangle here. Notice that this is a rectangle that I just drew. I can enforce the size. If I want it to be a specific width and height, I can go ahead and do that, which would be my expectation for any presentation tool. But I can also go back up to my arrow, and I want these to be slightly rounded. I can go a little bit. It's going to give me that number so that somebody else can match it. And now I'm going to go ahead and bring in another image. Let's just choose this one here. And like I said, remember that even though this is a rectangle one, right, it's going to go ahead and mask those edges. Now I want this to navigate to the second slide. So let's just duplicate this really quickly. Here's another thing that I really like about XD, because often we are looking at multiple elements that maybe I want to use on another slide. If you copy an element and you click on the artboard of the destination, I can go ahead and paste, and it remembers exactly the XY coordinate, which is great. So I'm going to just say destination. And now let's quickly jump to prototype mode. I may have 20 of these, 30 of these, 300 of these, whatever it may be, depending on what I want to focus on. But in prototype mode, as I said, now I'm looking at interactions. I'm going to click on the slide because I want anywhere I click on this slide to take me to the next one. I can get very specific. I could say they have to click on the image. That's going to give a different result than clicking on, let's say, title slide, which of course doesn't make a lot of sense, but just so you know that you can do these things separately. I'm going to drag this, just a wire, and when I drop it on a slide, I'm presented then with the options. Is this going to be a tap, a key, as I mentioned before? It's going to be a transition, or is it going to be automate? I also have a way to put an element on top without moving to another artboard. I basically take a shape and I overlay that over the top. Where this comes in really handy is if you were working on a mobile app and you did a search button, you could have a keyboard pop up on the slide. So it's something that you want it to interact with the slide you're on rather than moving to another one. I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to transition. I'm just going to use these standard dissolve ease out. I'm going to give it 0.3 seconds just for time's sake. Now let's just take a look at how that works. I'm focused on the title slide by clicking on the slide name, which, by the way, I can change these at any point. I think that would be everyone's expectation. Go again to the preview. And when I click, it takes me to this next slide. Now, you saw that that was a dissolve. Let's change this from a dissolve to a, let's say, slide right, because I want it to come from the left. Let's try that. All right, go back, preview, click, and now I get a slide. I'm not a real big fan of complicating my presentations with a lot of windy, spinny things. I do like animation because I think it can make a big impact in where I'm going with a particular concept. But that's up to you. And that's the beauty about this, is that you can personalize this how you want to. Now, let me go back to one more. This is as I was showing you earlier, this was a set of artboards so that the same project could be exported to different mobile devices. And I want to move down here really quickly and talk about this feature that I called the repeat grid. We see with a lot of these different artboards that we have different options. You see that there is a lot of common attributes, and subconsciously you all know this. You all do this when you're doing a presentation where you have, let's say, 4 different elements. You want people to feel that they are the same hierarchy, but those similarities have to end when you customize it for individual choices. And we see this in presentations, as I said, in mobile apps, in websites. So I want to create that effect. I could copy paste, adjust it. I could then do another copy paste, align, but it takes time. And what we're trying to do is remove as many steps as possible so you can focus on your message. What are you trying to do? So with this element, which I have defined, it's got everything I want. I want the size. I want the rounded rectangle. I want this particular style, text style, and this text style. And those are the things I want to be in common with each one of these pieces. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. With that element selected, and it contains all of these little pieces here, that background image, it has the text, right, the little icon. I'm going to go up to my upper right-hand corner, and if I hover over this, I see a little animated GIF, create repeated objects and customize with text and images. And I'm just going to do a very simple demo of this. I click repeat grid. Those selection handles change to 2 sliders. What that slider is going to let me do is just add multiple pieces or elements, right? It's like a duplicate and move over and align all in one little slide. I can also do this vertically. Now, in this instance, that doesn't make any sense for my particular layout, but this can be very helpful if you're putting together, let's say, a grid of profile photos or icons or something like that. Now that I have this here, I notice that I'm not really crazy about the spacing between them. So if I just hover between the elements and slide, I can get where I want that left, right boundary, what I want. And I really like this. Notice it's also giving me how many pixels is there, 44 pixels. So that gives me the ability to also tell someone else, I think this is what we want standard across this presentation. Now I want to customize these. And this is where this little finder window comes in handy. I've got 4 images. The first one I want to be the same. This is going to be that basic information, so I didn't necessarily want a photo, but I'm going to include that. And I'm going to include 3 other images that I've picked out for this grid. When I just drag them over the top, all I need to do is put them over one. I don't have to have it be the first one, the second one, or the third one. Any of them will work, and it goes through, populates it, sizes it, masks it, and it's ready for me. But that's not where I need to stop, right? It's going to take a lot of time for me to do a 29 artboards and continue to change this information, the text information. So here's where the other one comes in handy. If you have determined what that text will be ahead of time, you can put it into a text file. And I just opened up this little text file I'm going to drag over the top. Notice there's no formatting, no extra paragraph returns. There is nothing that's going to indicate attributes. And the reason for that is I want what I have formatted here to be the decision maker. I want this to rule the look and feel of these pieces. So that's why it's a .txt file. I'm going to take the headers and let's just drag this over. I want you to be able to see me doing this. Let's just drag this over again. And again, I'm looking for that darkened background so that I know that XD has acknowledged that this is the element that we are going to duplicate, or that we are going to fill in. And there I go. I have, let me just zoom in a little bit. I have basic information, Camp Curry years, National Park Services. And now what I'd like to do is take care of this plan your visit. So I have another little text file. These are my captions. I'm going to highlight this one. Remember, it doesn't matter. It's going to go from left to right. And now I have, which I'm sure is hard for you guys to see, camping, plan ahead, and pack right. If I wasn't explaining this to an audience, this would have taken me probably less than 60 seconds. If I had my assets ready that I had decided on, and the text that I wanted to have it appear really quick for me to do this. All right, Jason, any other questions yet?
No, it's been pretty silent. And I know we're nearly at the top of the hour, so maybe just to take us out with a summary.
Yes. So what I'd like everybody to think about is, one, I would love for you to get into XD and just play with it a little bit, see what you think about this. We have tutorials that are part of the application. I'd also like to show you a resource really quickly, which I really love. Obviously, on the Adobe website, there are lots of free downloadable files. This is also where you would find that animated, both the animated file that gives you templates for animations. It also gives you that presentation animated template. But there's another site called letsxd.com. And for any number of little short tutorials, you can go in here and I really like Howard Pinsky. He's the gentleman here who does these tutorials, really helpful. And they're very short and to the point. It's not like you're going to have to take an 8-hour course. I think you're going to pick this up pretty quickly, considering we have these students who, after 50 minutes, go on and they start developing mobile apps. So those are some of the resources that I'd like to draw your attention to. Also, if you are looking at your Creative Cloud app, which you would have on your computer, whether it's a PC or a Mac, at any point you can go to any of the applications, just as a reminder, and there are 3 dots on the right, which give you options for Learn More. I can go to the tutorials, which are over here on the left side of my screen, but if I really specifically want to look at something specific to XD, click Learn More, and it brings up tutorials and places that I can go to get more information right at my fingertips. All right, I will make sure that I include the website for both the maybe a link to the plugins and also to that presentation template that I was showing you that's not part of the plugin, so that everybody knows exactly where it is. I'm trying to think of anything else. Jason, we've just been kind of keeping track of things that we want to make sure we can make available to a potential Adobe cloud space that UNM might be putting together for all of the Adobe presentations.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.
Very nice. Martha, or any organizers from IT Tech Days, anything else that we need to do before we wrap for the session? I think we're solid. All right, Donna, I know everybody's going to their next session, so thanks again. And you can stop the recording if probably.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Trying to get there. Here we go. Thank you for
Thanks,
reminding